All right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to your college football game plan on nukethehouse.com. I am Dan, your host, Dan Moneyline, along with my co-host Ray Greyfox. Ray, nice to talk with you.
It's good to be here with the legend, Dan Moneyline Miller, straight out of Sin City. We're coming to you out of Blacksburg, Virginia here. I'm just a few steps away from Lane Stadium, where the Hokies will be having their home opener next week. This week they are in Nashville at Vandy, and that is one of the games we'll be covering today, Dan.
Awesome. Yeah, and as Ray said, I'm in the beautiful Sin City of Las Vegas, and let's get into a couple previews. Ray, we have a lot to get to here. It is the beautiful week one. We are finally here in college football. No need to wait. So we have one of the games here with a lot of line movement. The Clemson versus Georgia, your number 14 ranked versus number 1. This game is being played at Mercedes-Benz Arena, so it is technically a neutral field for both teams. What do you got, Ray, for this one? Clemson is like I said, a lot of line movement here. They were up to a 13.5-point favorite, underdogs. Now Georgia is at 11-point favorite here. What do you got?
So this is a beauty. This is certainly, I would say, one of the, if not the gem of week one. Unless I'm mistaken, 4 of the last 8 natties have come from these two schools. And we talked pre-show here about this Georgia football team. I mean, it's an absolute juggernaut. Last year, they just rolled the competition, lost to Alabama, obviously, in the SEC title game and got left out of the dance. One loss will not leave them out this year. This number is interesting. I had it handicapped about where it opened, which was right around 2 touchdowns. Obviously, a lot of money coming in on Clemson right now. When we look at Clemson offensively, their OC is Garrett Riley. So if you recognize that name, that's actually Lincoln Riley's brother. Their DC Glenn Schumann is in his 5th year. This Clemson team, there's a lot of question marks yet. We also talked pre-show. What Dabo Swinney did is he changed the culture at Clemson. He took them from a generally 500 team to a 10-win annual team. I look for Clemson to be improved on offense from last year. Now, last year, they weren't horrible. They put up 30 points a game and 408 yards a game. But I do look for them to get better. It looks like I've got them as 9 returning starters, off an average offense that's averaged between 26 and 44 points per game the last 7 years. Defensively is going to be interesting. They did have 5 starters drafted last year off this Clemson defense. So it's you look at these two teams, regular season win total for Clemson is 9.5. Georgia is 10.5. So, I mean, you're not going to get too many games with that high of RSWs. And the historical slot, we talked about that, 62-6 in the last 5 years for the Georgia Bulldogs, 54-13 for Dabo Swinney. So we have two teams that are big-time winners here. My projection for Clemson this year on my ratings is a +10 to a +15. I have Georgia's basement at +15 with a ceiling of +28, which if they finish the season in my ratings at +28, that's usually an undefeated team or certainly the favorite to win the national title. We'll get into my ratings in that later, but I think this game is fairly priced. I'm starting to get interested in Georgia. If I were to go anywhere in this game, it probably would be Georgia. I just don't know. I got to see more from Clemson to be willing to take them in this kind of moment today in Atlanta. It's as you said, it's neutral, but we both know Athens and Atlanta are not very far apart. And they've played a ton of games in the stadium Georgia has the last few years. So certainly a home neutral for Georgia. I've got to lean on Georgia here. I did not play the game, but like I said, at 11, I would only go one way, and that would be Georgia now.
And quick, with Dabo Swinney being reluctant to use the transfer portal, do you think that this year really catches up to Clemson?
It can, but that's that culture change that I talked about, right? It's now you're juggling so many things with NIL and the portal, and coaches do have to make a call. I mean, it's nice to develop teams, but can you really keep a 4 or 5 star on the 2 deep at Clemson for 2 years when he knows he could start at a lot of other schools? I mean, and the other schools are now coming with brown bags. So that's a huge dynamic shift in the game. I mean, I'm not going to get into the opinions people have of they've always been paying players. They just didn't admit to it. If they have, that's great. But I mean, in reality now, what they're giving them is far more than Eric Dickerson got or Craig James got at SMU. I mean, these are astronomical sums of money. High school kids are getting six figures now. I looked at Oregon's NIL the other day. They have two players making over $1.5 million a year.
Wow.
Their lowest paid guy is $250,000, I think. So when we look at Oregon and Ohio State, they're obviously picking their path. I call that sort of the Yankees, Padres, Mets, Dodgers sort of path. You know, they're going to spend and they're going to bring in the guns. I like Dabo's approach in that we've seen it, right, in baseball. If the highest payroll won, nobody would watch, right? I mean, because the highest payrolls are the same every year in baseball. If you're going to go that route, you're going to have to spend a lot of money, or you can try to build and you can hope for the loyalty we've seen at Clemson, and we see it at Virginia Tech this year where they had a ton of starters come back that certainly could have brown bagged off to other schools. So I like Dabo's approach, but to your point, is it going to get there for him? I'm not sure yet.
All right, quick, and then we're spending a little much on this game, but quick, Georgia first half -6.5. Are you playing that, or are you staying away from that?
Staying away. Again, if I played, it'd be Georgia.
Gotcha. All right, next game we're on the slate is number 8 ranked Penn State going on the road to West Virginia. This is the marquee game in ESPN. College football game day is there. Penn State now is a 7.5-point favorite on the road. Total 49 here, Ray. Talk to me about this game.
Penn State, West Virginia, game being contested in Morgantown, West Virginia. Mountaineer Field, home field advantage here for them is about a 4-point home field advantage. 60,000 fit inside that stadium. Should be absolutely full today. If they don't fill it today, they won't fill it any day this year. This is one of those games, I'm a guy that misses rivalries. Pitt, Penn State, Pitt, West Virginia, Virginia Tech, West Virginia. The area rivalries I really miss, and they're going away in college football. But to dub this a rivalry, Penn State is 35-2-1 versus West Virginia since 1956. Even I wasn't alive then, Dan. And they're on a current 5-game winning streak. They've covered their last 7 as road favorites at West Virginia. They're very, very good running backs, a young offensive line, Drew Aller at quarterback. The defense is one of the best in the country, and I think that's where you're going to, West Virginia is a good offensive team. They were a 30-point offense last year, and I expect them to be about a field goal better this year. So the cool matchup in this game to me will be the West Virginia offense versus what we know is a known commodity in the Penn State defense. I've always got to throw in the Franklin factor, right? This is not a big game. I'm not going to dub this a big game, but the Franklin factor, can he ever win against good opponents consistently? 13-25 versus the top 25. And that's at Penn State. He's 14-33 in his career versus top 25, and that's Penn State and Vandy. So, like I said, West Virginia offense is about a field goal better. 4 of the front 7 are back on the West Virginia defense that allowed 26.2 points per game last year. They should be similar to that number or a little bit better. Regular season win totals, West Virginia was 6.5. Penn State was 10. West Virginia 31-29 last 5 years, and Penn State 43-18. So again, even Penn State's basement, I have it at 7 to 10 points better than West Virginia. So I am not invested in this game, but I can't see taking West Virginia. It's another one. I got to wait and see on that.
Gotcha. Nuke The House is our website. You can find us on YouTube. Hit the like button, subscribe button to our YouTube. That would be great. Nuke25 is the code on our website, nukethehouse.com, for 25% off your first monthly plan. Ray, moving on to the next game here, we got Virginia Tech. A lot of people like Virginia Tech this year. They're going against, they're on the road at Vanderbilt. They're laying 13.5 here. We haven't really seen much line movement. Talk to me about this game, total 49.
This one contested in Nashville, First Bank Stadium, nice little intimate park that they've done a lot of improvements to. It holds 39,790. It's a short home field advantage here. It's listed, I've got it rated at about 2 points on the home field for Vandy. Generally, they're, when they play teams like Tennessee, there's more Tennessee fans there. So, and you're right about VT. I mean, Brent Pry has done a great job. Record-wise, not so much. He's 10-14 here, and that's his overall head coaching record as well. It's his first job as a head coach. He was a 6-year DC at Penn State and he was a former coach at Vandy, so he does know Nashville. There'll be nothing new to him there. He is bringing back a Virginia Tech team with 21 returning starters. We did speak about this as well. That kind of loyalty, I mean, it was really big to see them. They're building their NIL, and he's definitely brought back guys. He's got his players have faith in him. Their schedule really, they got a regular season win total of 8.5. They get to host Clemson, and they're at Miami. Other than that, if they win this game today, it's hard to not see them go over that 8.5. Virginia quarterback is absolutely outstanding. He's just Kyron Drones. He's an absolute stud. So, Vandy has lost 5 in a row versus Virginia Tech. They're 4-15 against the spread at home under head coach Clark Lee. Lee is 9-17 here, and overall, it's his only head coaching job. He was a fullback at Vandy 2002 through 2004. So you do get a lot of familiarity there. This game, if I went anywhere, it would be Virginia Tech. It's just you have to weigh in that SEC versus ACC, and it's not like Virginia Tech is a FSU or Miami or Clemson. They're a rising ACC team. Vandy, obviously a basement bottom team in the SEC, but they do play SEC competition weekly. So this is a pass for me. I did play the total, and I did give that out. I'm sorry, on Run Pure. I gave out over the total on Nuke The House. I did give that out to our subscribers this week over VT Vandy, so that is a bet for me. So I am looking for points. I think Drones is too much for this Vandy defense. I think Tech should hang 40 minimum in this game, and I think if they hang 40, this game will go over the total. But I expect a big day from Virginia Tech's offense.
All right, sounds good. I like that. And what's your thoughts on I know it may not be the sexiest play, Ray, but what about a Georgia money line and a Virginia Tech money line? Just to, feel good.
I wouldn't argue that at all. I mean, that's, I don't know what your return's going to be I don't have the parlay calculator out on those two money lines, but I certainly wouldn't begrudge anyone playing those two favorites. I'd be, again, I think I don't see VT losing to Vandy, and I've got to wait and see on Clemson until they can beat somebody like a Georgia. They haven't done it recently, so I would say that I'd be good with that parlay. Absolutely.
Gotcha. So minus 217 if you want that. I'm a big parlay player, and just to get to through the 12 o'clock games, that might be someone you guys might be looking to play. So now moving on to the 3:30 p.m. games, we have Akron going against the juggernaut Ohio State here. Ohio State laying 48.5 points, Ray. Total 57. Talk to me about this game.
I mean, I could go on and probably spend a minute on this game because it's Akron versus Ohio State. This game's going to be over early and often. The 48.5 numbers, what makes it an interesting bet if you're going to bet it, because they are in-state teams. OSU coach may not want to run it up on Akron. You could see a lot of backups for Ohio State early in the second half. This game is being contested in Columbus at Ohio Stadium. 102,780 faithful in Columbus. This is one of the biggest home fields in college football. I have it just over 5 points on the home field advantage. OSU 8-1, 2-2 against the spread versus Akron. So there you see that where that spread number comes into play, right? The spread's the only thing you're talking about in this game. It's not, so OSU is going to win this football game. Last time, 2021, OSU won 59-7. The last 3 meetings have gone under the total here. So this is one of those games as a bettor, 48.5 with a total of 58, 59. I mean, that sort of spells out the game to you, doesn't it? Do you think Akron can score? Can they score any points? But the last 3 have gone on under. And I do have some good news for you Akron backers, Dan. Akron did beat Ohio State in 1894. That's a fact. Akron did beat Ohio State. Their quarterback is an NC State transfer. Listen, OSU is a national title contender. There's no sign stealing for Michigan this year. This game should be a steam fest. OSU, it's not a number I'll lay, but I would never recommend betting Akron.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's definitely a tough one. Where we see a massive spreads now in week 1. A lot of the favorites have been covering those spreads. As of now, I can't tell you the exact number, but for example, Army is really beat up on their team this week, and just a couple big favorites that have really come in. So definitely look at Ohio State in that game. Next game we have is Colorado State going against number 4 Texas, another massive spread year. Colorado State 30-1 to win if you like their money line. Texas laying 34.5 here, total 60.5. Talk to me about this one.
This one being contested, Darrell K. Royal Memorial Stadium there in Austin, 100,119, a similar home field advantage as Ohio State, one of the better ones in college football. Texas all-time 15-1 straight up versus Mountain West teams. These two teams have met one other time, 46-0 beat down handed out by Texas in 1975. I don't even know if you were alive then, Dan. Texas does make the leap to the SEC. That's sort of the most exciting aspect. Texas and Oklahoma, it is a step up from the Big 12 to SEC, but it's not it's not massive, as Texas has sort of been a national contender. They've been playing quite good football in a while. They are certainly a national title contender. Texas is. They're at Michigan and they play Georgia, and that's pretty much their schedule. They're the flip-flop. They get the easier version of it versus some of the harder schedules, like Ohio State certainly has a harder schedule to get a path to the 12-team playoff. I do expect them to handle Oklahoma. Just a little look ahead. The Red River Shootout, that game's played later on a neutral at the Texas State Fair. That's just a look-ahead spot for me. I will be looking to play on Texas versus Oklahoma. But here today, I don't expect much resistance from Colorado State. If you're a look-ahead guy, or if you're one of those guys, I don't know how you have a look-ahead in week 1. I never really understood that. I mean, you've been looking ahead for this game for months now.
Yeah.
The look-ahead for Texas, they do have Michigan on deck on September 7th. So that's obviously big. So I think even if they were looking a mile ahead, I don't think they dropped this game to Colorado. My ratings have this game accurately priced. The money has come in on Texas. They were 32 earlier in the week. They're at, you said 34.5 now. So again, exciting to see Texas in the SEC, excited to see them in contention for a national title. But today I don't see much resistance from Colorado State there in Austin.
Gotcha. So you can follow Ray on Twitter at Ray Greyfox, and me, Dan Moneyline Miller, at Moneyline Miller. You can also visit nukethehouse.com, where you can find real-time in-game betting sports notifications, pre-game bets, and we're up over 200 units this year, and all plays are tracked. So make sure you head over to that website, www.nukethehouse.com. Moving on to a marquee matchup here, number 19 ranked Miami going on the road to staying in the state, going to Florida, Gainesville. Miami is a 2.5-point favorite here. Florida money line is plus 120, total 54. Ray, what do you see about this game?
This is another week 1 beauty. I mean, I understand Florida's not we're not looking for Florida to contend in the playoff this year. I would certainly say that. It would be a shock if they did. Miami, however, we are. This game is being contested in Gainesville, Ben Hill Griffin Stadium, affectionately known to the locals as the Swamp. 90-degree game time temperature, 88,548 will be sweating it out inside the Swamp today. A similar home field, a big home field advantage. I have this one at about 4.6, 4.8 as a home field advantage. The big news for Miami, they got a regular season win total of 9.5. So anytime you're looking at totals like that, you have to know that team's got to be they're playoff or bust, so to speak. So one of the bets I did make this year, I played over the Miami total, over 9. And we'll talk about a little of that if we go through the rundown. But so I do have interest in Miami in this game, and that would keep me from playing it. Florida's sort of a little bit of 4.5 win total, but if you look at the schedule, you can kind of see why. I mean, they're loaded up. I mean, they start with Miami, they get a layup, and they Texas A&M, Mississippi State, UCF, Tennessee, Kentucky, Georgia, Texas, LSU, Mississippi, and Florida State. So it's like Florida is going to face a major gauntlet. That's why the regular season win total is 4.5. Billy Napier at the helm for Florida, 11-14 here in the Swamp, and here at Florida, 51-26 overall. And of course, Miami bringing Mario Cristobal at the helm. He's trying to turn this program around, formerly at Oregon, but he was a Miami player, so he certainly knows the environment in Miami. Again, if you're betting in over 9.5, You need 10 wins to win that. You need a 10-2 season. If they get by this game in the Swamp, Florida A&M, that's a win. Ball State, USF, VT could be tight. Cal's a win. Louisville's a win. FSU could be tight. Duke, Georgia Tech, Wake, and Syracuse. So this is one of those games. I also had the UNC over this year at 7.5, and that Minnesota game was sort of the linchpin in that bet. When you're looking at their schedule, you're obviously just projecting. You don't know how these games are going to turn out, but when they beat that Minnesota team, it's almost like they got to really fall off a cliff to knock it over 7.5. If Miami wins this game at Florida, I feel like my over 9.5 regular season win bet is safe. I like the number here. It's a sharp number. Again, I did not bet this game, but I do have the Miami regular season win total over. It's the first time Miami's been to the Swamp since 2008. The last meetings went under the total. They lost 3 of 5 road openers with versus Temple and Louisville. They're 2 wins, Miami, in losing 3 of 5 openers. Their only 2 wins were against Temple and Louisville. So a team that has not gotten out of the gate really well in their season opener. This should be a really good football game. It's going to be hot down there. I'd really love to lean to Florida here, but I just can't see myself doing it. This Miami team, 17 returning starters. It's a veteran team. The portal was well used. They're well coached, primed for the playoffs. I don't see any losses after November 1. Like I said, at Florida, VT and FSU are the entirety of their schedule, essentially. Three opponents that are going to even present a challenge. But, they are a playoff team to look for them to gel, but 10 returning starters for Miami offense. Last time they did that, they averaged 34 points per game. So, I'm pulling for Miami because of my regular season win total, but I'd really like to see this bring back the great games and rivalries that we're used to seeing from Miami, Florida, Florida State.
Absolutely. Are you concerned a little bit that Mario Cristobal's coaching malpractice might, come into factor during this season? He's shown that, in previous seasons.
No, I mean, I'm a fan of his, but again, what he's trying to do here, he's trying to kind of bring the culture back at Miami, right? And that's going to take a lot of things. But I do like Cristobal. I don't think he's going to be what holds him back this year, if that makes any sense. I don't think he's going to be the something that slows this team down. He's just got a lot of veterans. Again, this is a team that's averaged between 23 and 34 points a game the last 7 years, and they're giving up just under 20. So, this is a good football team, and they're primed. And I think if they take that step today, that'll send the message sort of to all the other contenders that Miami may well be back. And if they win today, it wouldn't shock me if they win 11 or even 12 games.
All right, right on. And Ray also mentioned the heat down there in Florida. Total is 54. So if you think that teams are going to be slowing it down a little bit, you might want to lean towards that underplay. Next game we have on tap is UTEP at Nebraska. A quarterback, Dylan Raiola, mistakenly for Patrick Mahomes in some places. But what are you looking like in this game? Nebraska's laying 27.5, total 48.5.
I mean, again, this is another one. This is kind of the product of week 1, right? You're only going to get so many marquee games. We'd love to sit up here and talk about Clemson, Georgia, Miami, Florida, the LSU game. But, we'd love to cover just that. Unfortunately, with the slate, this is one of the games that we're going to talk about. Contested in Memorial Stadium, Lincoln, Nebraska. 90,000 can fit into that joint. I've got a just under 4-point home field advantage. Nebraska is 8-4 straight up, 4-5 against the spread versus Conference USA foes. Nebraska has a very soft opening schedule, first 7 games. So if you look at Nebraska's opening games, UTEP, Colorado, Northern Iowa, Illinois, Purdue, Rutgers, and then they get a bye. So, if there's excitement around the Nebraska program today, come mid-October, you may see a ton of excitement because if they're not unbeaten, they've fallen flat on their face. Then they get Ohio State on the 26th of October and USC on November 16th. They finish their season strong with at USC November 16th. Both teams will be off a bye. They host Wisconsin, and then they go at Iowa, a team that I'm very high on this year, the Iowa Hawkeyes. But, everyone I think is high on this Nebraska team. Their regular season win total was 7.5. But again, that's schedule related. I don't think this is a playoff team, or even a New Year's Six, as we used to say, team. I just don't. The schedule may give them a fancy record at the end. I also have a note here: their special teams should improve. On the UTEP side, let's see if I have rest off some. So, I don't see much here that would ever make me bet UTEP in this game, but I'm also not as high on Nebraska as some are. I think that, Nebraska, again, the schedule's the main factor. UTEP 0-3 all time versus the Big Ten. UTEP is 0-24 versus Power 5. So they covered one of their last 11 versus Power 5 teams. There's no light on here that makes me want to look UTEP's way.
Gotcha. So just a reminder for all those watching us on YouTube, please hit the like and subscribe button, Nuke the House. And for our website, promo code is Nuke25. That's nukethehouse.com. Nuke25 is the code for 25% off your first payment and monthly plan. You can also find us on Twitter at Ray Greyfox and at Moneyline Miller. Use the hashtag NTHGP. Nuke the House College Football Game Plan. This is the show you're listening to. We have a question, Ray. Do you think Miami, Ohio is beating Northwestern today? And what are your thoughts on that game?
I'd have to pull that one up. Let me just see what I've got numbers-wise on those two teams. Miami, Ohio, I rated about Northwestern. Certainly not a shock, right? I mean, we're talking about Northwestern. I mean, is anybody going to be shocked if Northwestern loses a game to a Miami, Ohio? I mean, I wouldn't be standing up there saying that's the craziest thing that ever happened. It's a tough step because anytime you have to find a way as a handicapper to value conferences, right? So, like in my ratings, if I have two teams rated similar, Alabama and App State last year had a similar rating, and I'll go into my handicapping method later, but mine is basically a line of scrimmage rating, offense and defense, which is the majority of the game, but we do factor other things in. But if you look at those two ratings on paper, those teams rate out about the same. But we both know Alabama and App State play vastly different schedules. The Sun Belt is different from the SEC. So, to ask a Miami, Ohio team to make that jump is a lot, right? To beat a Big Ten team, but we are talking about Northwestern. So when we talk about these bottom tier teams and big conferences, that'd be your Vandy, your Illinois, Vandy in the SEC, your Illinois, Indiana, Northwesterns, and Big Ten play. Certainly wouldn't shock me to see that one. I wouldn't, that wouldn't floor me.
Right on. Moving up to the 4 p.m. Eastern game, we have Boise State taking on Georgia Southern. Boise State is laying 13 points here. Total 57, Ray. Talk to me about this game.
Well, if you're an Allman Brothers fan, you're aware of Statesboro, Georgia, home of the Statesboro Blues and the Allman Brothers. That's where this game will be contested at Allen E. Paulson Stadium. Another intimate setting. I've actually seen some games there. It's a very cool place to see a ball game. 25,000 can fill that stadium. I've got it at about 3.6 on a home field advantage. If you're factoring that into your handicapping, Dan, I had this game fairly priced. It's Georgia Southern has not been a home dog since 2022, so that's something to consider. This is kind of two storied programs in a weird way, right? Georgia Southern piled up Division I AA national titles. For you young kids, I'm going to call it Division I AA until I die. That's what, to me, it'll always be. Now it's FCS, right? So both of these teams are former FCS national champions. So it's kind of this game that drew my eye, and I really wanted to bet Georgia Southern. The numbers just couldn't take me there. It is their first home opener versus an FBS team since 2017. Both teams, again, were former national champions at the FCS level. Boise's on an 8-2 against the spread run in road openers. Boise State had a regular season win total 9.5, Georgia Southern 5.5. Again, Georgia Southern, Clay Helton's trying to turn this program around. He's a good ball coach. He's 58-38 overall as a head coach. But again, he's just getting into his third year here, 12-14 overall. Boise does have a lot of returning starters. I've got them at about 16, 17 returning starters. Their head coach, Spencer Danielson, finished out last year. He went 3-1. I've got the ceiling of both teams. I've got this to be about a about where the line is if both teams play at their ceiling. Some of the cool notes for this game, Georgia Southern has a pretty rich coaching history. The great Irk Russell, who was the DC at Georgia during the Herschel Walker years and the Vince Dooley years, he started the Georgia Southern program, and he was a fantastic head football coach, great defensive mind. And he led Georgia Southern from basically they were working out of trailers when they started the program to hoisting trophies for natties. Virginia Tech coach Brent Pry also did some time at Georgia Southern, as did Paul Johnson, the legendary triple ops coach, as well as Willie Fritz. So again, games fairly priced. The head coach, Boise State's head coach Danielson, was elevated last year. He's been here since 2017 at at Boise. So he's a graduate assistant, going all the way back to his graduate assistant day. They've got some new coordinators. It's just, I feel like the regular season win total it's a fair betting number, that their regular season win total of 9.5. If you look at their schedule, obviously you see they're at Oregon next week. But other than that, it's not an overwhelming schedule. So I can certainly see Boise winning 10 games. My heart wants to go with Georgia Southern here, but the game is really well priced. So that's a stay away from me.
Gotcha. Ray, talk to me with the new season coming around. Everyone likes to, fire away week one. Talk to me about some of your betting strategies here for college football.
So it was funny because I was in the Discord in the Nuke The House Discord the other day, and everybody's like, "What's going on? Where are the bets at? Where are the bets at?" And it's like, guys, I'm a data-driven handicapper, so I use an algorithm for my ratings. That's what my rate, so that's the only thing I do that's modern era. Everything else I do is all handwritten out. Okay, I've got the schedule, I've got points, I've got a historical rating, 2023 rating, 2023 record, 2024 projection. I put their regular season win total, their last 5 years, because again, that's sort of the culture of the program, where it's headed, and then the game by game log. So I start with being data driven with an algorithm that produces a rating, but I'm also looking at other factors. Like I said, mine is a line of scrimmage rating, or an LSR is what I call it. So it's going to cover the majority of the game, right? With football, offense, defense, special teams. So I do factor in special teams. Obviously, I factor in coaching and weather. There's all kinds of other things minutia you can add. But what you don't have week one is hard data. So personally, and that's why there's a lot of stay away spots for me in the week one, week 0. But I price these games as if they were the week 14 game last year. So again, when I worked up my numbers for Clemson, Georgia, that's based on what they closed out last year at. Then obviously I'm looking at, do they have 18 returning starters or 8, right? That's going to be whether they're trending up or trending down off that rating. So that rating's not written in stone, but that's the data I have to go by. That right now, you can't say you're driving, all the numbers are driving your plays in week one, because there are no numbers, right? It's projections. So if I think a team was, a +5 last year and they have 18 returning starters and a softer schedule, that team's rating is obviously going to uptick, but I'm projecting it to uptick. I'm not looking at it week in, week out, compiling the data. So that's my way. I encourage everyone, if you're, there's recreational bettors, right? There's guys that are going to bet a noon game, a 3:30 game, a 7:30 game. If they go 2-1, they might bet a late game. And that's fine. And that's awesome. I mean, that's solid play, whatever. If you're going to handicap the sport, and that's the majority of the betting world, right? If you're going to try to handicap the sport, I encourage you, should you develop an algorithm? It took me a number of years to do that, actually. So if you don't have that kind of commitment, there's other ways you can rate teams using data, right? So I would encourage you to try to be data driven, yards per play, all the different numbers, all the stuff you can access now. It's totally different than when I started doing this, with all the different data points that you can pull up. But try to be as data driven as you can, and you can simplify it or complicate it as much as you want. I mean, I'm sure there's an MIT team out there grinding away today, and they are 100% data driven. But I encourage you to be data driven. I encourage you to tread lightly in weeks 0 and 1, because really we're all just guessing, right? I mean, we don't know anything concrete about these teams this year, except for where they finished last year and where we think they're headed. Okay, so I encourage people to tread lightly early. Your plays should build up as you progress into the season, because you're compiling actual data against current FCS teams. So I'm a light starter.
And I wanted to point out to that point that week 0 or week 1, we had Colorado playing North Dakota State, and Colorado went from a 9-point favorite all the way up to a 10.5-point favorite at some spots. And the number didn't even matter because North Dakota State was the right team. So to Ray's point, you want to, tread lightly with these week 1 games because you really don't know much about it because we aren't given the, exposure like for the NFL. You have all the media people at every single practice, and all these practices in the college campuses are closed. So there's only a handful of reporters that you can really trust and get you the right information. And some of that information might not even come out until like 30 minutes before kickoff. So again, college football is really volatile. And like Ray said, tread lightly week 1. The more you get, the more numbers you get, the more you'll be comfortable handicapping. So that's just want to point out to our viewers here in week 1 is don't fire away all your bets week 1 and get, disgruntled that you didn't win because it's hard. Everywhere, this is such an unknown, space we're in week 1. So definitely tread lightly, and that's why we're trying not picking every game here and saying, definitely leaning other ways. But getting back to our handicapping here, Ray, let's take a look at the 7 p.m. game. This is another big spread. We have Western Kentucky going against number 5 ranked Alabama. And Alabama is a 32.5-point favorite here, total 59. What do you like in this game?
So this game being contested in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and Bryant-Denny Stadium, another big SEC park, 101,821 fit in there. Again, another monster number. So the cool thing about Alabama, right, is in my opinion, one of the greatest college coaches to ever do it was Nick Saban. I don't think anybody that questions that just is an Auburn fan or hates LSU and Alabama, whatever. He was one of the greatest to ever do it, if not the greatest. And, I don't care. Kalen DeBoer, no question, quality football coach. He's 37-9 in FBS. He's 104-12 in his career. So they obviously found someone to replace him that knows how to win football games. But it's still a wait-and-see moment because coaching Washington or coaching an FCS teams or FBS teams, it's not, it's a huge jump to take on an Alabama program. It's a culture. You don't lose games. Like you lose a game in Alabama and they're like, what are you doing, dude? Like that's not any other program. So, while I have them as, almost twice as, I have their rating going up this year, but I have it more fitting into their historical rating slot. Last year, I had them at a 6.23 on my ratings. I've got them at a +12 to +18 this year. But again, I'm casting nets right there because we're talking about Kalen DeBoer in his first year. I have to call it a wait and see. If you look at the schedule, starts off fairly soft, but then they host Georgia. They go at Tennessee. They host Missouri. Missouri, obviously, a lot of people are very high on Missouri this year. They go at LSU. That's never easy. They go at Oklahoma. I expect them to win that game because I think Oklahoma's not very good this year, as good people think. And then, of course, their season ender versus Auburn. I expect this team to be in the playoff. Alabama's won their last 22 openers. They're 17-5 against the spread in that time period. They're 3-0 versus Western Kentucky by an average margin of, if we had to guess, what would it be, Dan? 32.3. That's what they average beating Western Kentucky by. It's right around the number in this game, isn't it? Alabama has won 43 straight versus non-power fives. Western Kentucky, if you want a reason to try to side with them here, they do have 4 wins against SEC opponents. So again, it's a nice football team, Western Kentucky. I mean, they've got a 7.5 regular season win total, 40-26 in their last 5 years. And that's all under Tyson Helton, their head coach. This was his first job as an HC. So 40-26 out of the gate. That's pretty good introduction to him. So I do like their head coach. But their head coach is compiling that 40-26 record is 0-6 against the spread as a double-digit dog. 0-6 against the spread as a double-digit dog. So this, I'd love to encourage somebody to do something here, but again, it's just a massive number. I could obviously see playing Alabama. I could see piling it into a money line parlay if that's something you like to do. I don't see Western Kentucky winning this game, but I mean, again, it's not. They're well coached. The quarterback is from Auburn, so obviously he's not freaking out seeing Alabama. He's a transfer. They have a vet. Western Kentucky has a vet offensive line. Their defense is young, and that's where I think could be the decider today. It's hard to chase them when they're hanging 50 points, 60 points on you. I thought their win total was well placed. So it's a wait and see for me on Alabama and Kalen DeBoer, but I think they found the right guy for the job. It's just a matter of whether he can handle a culture that doesn't expect to lose a game, right? Absolutely. At Washington, you're not going to get fired for losing a game. I mean, for sure. But at Alabama, you're not going to get fired for losing a game, but people are going to be asking questions, certainly when you lose the second one. I mean,
for sure. I think Kalen DeBoer is in the absolute spotlight right here. Coming after Nick Saban, it's a tough job. Being a Patriot fan and, knowing what comes after Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, those expectations haven't really met. But this is Alabama. This is college football. So some of the expectations here are a little different. But just know that, with a new coach comes new opportunities and new game schemes. So like Ray says, you really have to wait and see how they're going to play and how they're going to attack certain games. So moving on, Ray, to the next marquee matchup we have tonight, going on at 7:30 p.m. EST. Number 7 ranked Notre Dame going against number 20 ranked Texas A&M. Texas A&M is a 3-point favorite here. Total 47.5. Ray, who do you like to win this game?
This is a fantastic ball game, by the way. I mean, a fantastic ball game, especially for week 1. You get a major independent that travels to an SEC. We all know Notre Dame, right? They're going to play the Air Force, Army, Navy. They're going to play the cupcakes that they do play. But I give them props for opening the season here and going at Texas A&M in week 1. This game's contested in College Station, Texas. Kyle Field, one of the great home fields in college football. 102,000 will fill that joint, I'm sure, today. A&M is 2-3 all time versus Notre Dame. They last met in 2001, so no recent history here. A&M has won their last 11 home openers, 7-4 against the number there. A&M does have a new head coach in Mike Elko. If you recognize the name, he came over from Duke. So Elko he had good results at Duke. Again, Duke and Texas A&M is a different culture, right? So when you step up to these SEC cultures and these high-level stuffs, the patience can burn thin really quick if you start losing ball games. So this is a really big contest for Elko and his Texas A&M squad. Elko was also a little familiarity that here. He was the DC at Notre Dame in 2017. So he is familiar with the Irish in some regards there. The fave is 4-1 straight up here, 3-2 against the spread. Notre Dame did lose their last time here in 2001. They were +3 and they got beat 24-3. So and looking at Notre Dame, I feel like this Marcus Freeman has a really good team here. 15 returning starters. Vegas pegged them with 10.5 regular season wins. They've gone 51-13 in their last 5 years. And you compare that to Texas A&M, 37-23 in their last 5 years. But again, 18 returning starters for the Aggies. They're tapped with a regular season win total of 8.5. This game really had my interest in a lot of different ways. And looking at Notre Dame, you have a transfer quarterback. He's solid, but he's behind a young O-line, a very veteran defense for Notre Dame. This is another defense that could make a lot of noise this year, along with Penn State. Very, very good defense. It's just, in my notes, I have a really good defense that's getting better. So, Notre Dame's definitely got a team that's primed. I'm sure they're ready to get back, get themselves back up in the national contention. So if I look at my ratings on this game, the ratings just say, if this is week 14 or 15 last year, it's a Notre Dame bet, and it's a Notre Dame bet. But again, you've got a little disparity. You got a lot of returning starters for Texas A&M. You have a home field. You have an SEC team playing a major independent. So, my numbers are like Notre Dame. I did not bet this game. My numbers definitely like Notre Dame here. And like I said, if it was late season, this would have been an auto bet, Notre Dame getting points. But You are going to an SEC foe. It's never easy. It's a very, very tough place to play. So just a massive early game here. And, again, I leaned to Notre Dame, but this should be a really, really good football game that I'm definitely looking forward to watching.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of comments, Ray. And if you want to follow us on YouTube, Nuke The House, hit the like and subscribe button. That would be much appreciated. We're getting a little questions here in the chat, Ray. UConn plus 19. Do you have any thoughts on them covering today against Maryland?
If I had any lean in that game, it would be Maryland.
Gotcha. Understood. All right. And the line actually went from 19. We are just talking about that to 18.5. So people are actually betting UConn right now. So that tells you a little bit. But we also want to emphasize, again, staying away with the big name teams and big name schools. Bettors, if you want to be a successful bettor in this industry, you can't just fire away at every single game. That's not going to be a successful long-term formula for you. You want to know, it's called picking your spots as being a professional bettor. So that's why we're week one is such an unknown, and I would honestly stay away from some of the massive big schools with massive spreads and just see what they're all about. That's my advice going into week one. But going to the next game here, Ray, on Sunday, one of the marquee matchups of the week, we have number 23 ranked USC taking on number 13 ranked LSU. LSU is a 4-point favorite here, total 64.5. Talk to me about this one.
If I'm not mistaken, Dan, this game is being played in your backyard at the Death Star. Is that correct?
It is, absolutely.
Okay, that's why what a great venue. I was there when they were constructing it. I was visiting when they were building it. It was about like half to three-quarter done. I just thought it was so cool. It's such an awesome stadium. I lived in Vegas when they had the NBA All-Star game. The cover of the USA Today the next day. I don't know if you're a longtime Vegas resident, people remember it. The headline on USA Today, not the sports, but the main paper, was "Disaster in the Desert." There was tons of people arrested. I never thought they'd get pro sports in Vegas. They have a hockey team that's awesome. They're going to have a football team now. They're going to get a baseball team. Giddy up, Vegas. Giddy up. They have it all.
Yeah.
They have it all in Sin City, baby. This is another great football game. USC, LSU, Las Vegas. The Death Star holds 65,000. So LSU has lost 4 straight openers. That's sort of odd for a team that's as good as they are. Those losses have come to Florida State, Penn State, UCLA, and Mississippi State. So that certainly USC would fit into that fold. The last meeting here was quite a while ago. I was in high school. It was 1984. LSU was a 1-point favorite. They beat them 23-3. So an interesting note, I'm kind of really, like I said, I really like more local stuff in college football. I hate to lose local rivalries. I don't understand what teams that are literally on the Pacific Ocean playing in the Atlantic Coast Conference make it make sense, Dan. I can't get with it. But USC, it's just a note, will travel 16,000 miles on their Big Ten schedule this season. Of course, today they could take a luxury bus if they wanted from LA to Vegas. So this is a nice game. USC regular season win total 7.5. They returned 14 starters off a team that went 8-5 last year. USC 36-22 in their last 5 years. And Lincoln Riley is at the helm. He's 19-8 here at USC. He's 74-18 overall. So again, my first note on this team, Riley is a good head coach. The new DC is Anthony Lynn, who's
we know him from the NFL.
Who's right? He's the son of former Chargers head coach, I believe. So and he's very good. The quarterback is unproven. The backup's a UNLV transfer. Veteran defense with new DC. That's kind of my notes on USC. There are 26 to 41 points per game on offense the last 7 years. Their defense yields 26 to 34. They give up 34 points per game last year. So their last 7 years highs were both last year. They scored the most points on offense as they have in the last 7 years, and they allowed the most points on defense. I do see this defense improving. So I think it's it's a better football team because the defense is going to give up less, and offensively, I don't think they're going to take a hit at all. LSU's 12 returning starters, regular season win total of 9, 46-19 in the last 5 years. So Brian Kelly, He's just a vet coach. He's 118-35 in D3. He's 188-69 in D1. He's 20-7 here at LSU, 306-104 overall for Brian Kelly. My ratings projection for LSU +9 to +15 to finish the season or throughout the season, and a +2 to +6 for USC. So, I've got LSU here. The basement and ceiling is about a touchdown better than USC on a neutral. If I had to go any way with this game, it's very, very hard to go against LSU here. So I would lean LSU. I did not bet the game, but my lean would be on LSU.
All right. And if you're listening to us on Twitter or YouTube, that is nukethehouse.com. If you head over to our website, Nuke25 is our promo code. There you get 25% off your first monthly plan. Nukethehouse.com, real-time in-game sports betting notifications, pre-game bets, and we're up over 200 units this year, and all plays are tracked. So make sure you head over to nukethehouse.com. Last game here on the dock for today, Ray, we have on Monday night, Boston College going to Florida to play Florida State. Here, Florida State is a 17-point favorite, total 50. Talk to me about this one.
Tallahassee, Florida. You can just hear the legendary Keith Jackson calling this one. Live from Tallahassee, Doak Campbell Stadium, an intimate little spot. Everybody thinks it was a huge building. It holds 55,000. Again, FSU is a decent favorite here. I've got FSU of 15-5 straight up versus BC. FSU has covered 6 of their last 8 versus BC. The interesting note here is BC is obviously in their opener. This will be their opener. Those of you who watched week 0 saw the game from Dublin, Ireland, where FSU was just sort of, I don't know if disinterested is the right word, but they sort of looked caught up in Ireland or something. I mean, they're a better football team than what they showed versus Georgia Tech.
It was a tough one,
Yeah, Georgia Tech is a good – Georgia Tech and Brent Key, an interesting note about Brent Key, we talked about this earlier in the week. He's like 12-10 at Georgia Tech. He's 5-0 versus ranked ACC opponents after that win against Florida State. So his AD's got to be like, you can knock off the ranked ones. What's going on the rest of the time? You're 12-10 overall. But back to this one, I think FSU is being a little undervalued here. Again, historically, they covered 6 of their last 8. They're coming off this loss. They were outgained. What concerns me with FSU is they were outgained 336-291 to Georgia Tech, but mainly the biggest number that jumped out off the page at me, Georgia Tech rushed for 190 yards. And no offense, but if you're going in to play a Brent Key team, he was the O-line coach for Nick Saban at Alabama. Did you think he wasn't going to run it? Did you think he was going to chuck it all over Ireland? I mean, that's concerning when you have to think FSU goes into that game like, we got to stop the run to beat this team. And they gave up 190 rushing yards. So, how much do you chalk up to the trip to Europe, the neutral field, the Ireland, all the stuff that goes along with it? I think FSU is better than what they showed. And I think if the real FSU shows up today, they can certainly cover this number. So, again, we look at the ACC. Most publications that I looked at preseason have BC only ahead of UVA, who's horrible, and Stanford. Throw out the Stanford game last night. TCU carried wheelbarrows of opportunity over to the Stanford sideline. That's the most misleading final you might ever see in college football. Those of you at Nuke the House know that I did bet TCU at 7. I bet that a number of weeks ago. That's the benefit of getting an early number. I got away with that one. When they gave up the field goal late, but that game went from 7 to 9.5, back to 7.5, but 7 was no longer available. But by grabbing it early, I got the push. I did grab them twice in game last night, but that Stanford team is not. I mean, that's as good as you're ever going to see them look. So BC is a bottom ACC team. FSU was considered a top one. 16.5 points in Tallahassee. BC's lost their last 6 trips here to Tallahassee. They're 2-4 against the number there. Last time they were here, BC in 2022, they trailed 31-0 at the half and were outgained 327-64. So, I'm going to go ahead and look for. I did not bet the game, and I can go over after this all the bets that I have. So many bets this week, obviously, but if I did anything, I would be on FSU here. There's nobody that could talk me into betting BC in this game.
Right on. All right, Ray. Here's the time that everyone's looking for. Talk to me about some of your bets you're placing for week one.
So my week one action, I have four regular season win bets. I don't normally do many of those, but in preparing for these shows, I thought I saw some advantage, some math advantage there. So I did Miami. I took over 9 regular season wins. UNC, this one went out to everybody on Nuke the House in an article. You can find that under NCAA football articles on the Nuke the House website. UNC over 7.5. I took Utah State over 5.5 and got a big plus price there, like plus 135, I think. Utah State over 5.5, and Washington I took under 6.5. So those are 4 regular season win totals I made. My bets this week, I obviously had TCU -7, which graded out as a push. I grabbed 2 in-game money lines on TCU to make that a profitable game for me. UTSA, I have UTSA today -24, -108. And I think that game's held pretty true to that number. It went up to 24.5, and I think it even hit 25, but it's come back since. I have the VT Vandy over the total. I think that's at 48.5 now. I actually bet a bad number there. I think I bet it at 50. But I just VT Vandy. If VT doesn't hang 40 on Vandy, it's a real letdown to start a season where they're actually. I mean, if you watch the week 0 pregame show, Pat McAfee took Virginia Tech to win the ACC. So if you're talking about winning the ACC, I mean, I know it's a non-conference game, but you definitely can't go to Vandy and not shine. I mean, it's Vandy. Come on, it's Vandy. They're not playing baseball. So, and I'll tell people I have 2 other totals that I have played today. DM me on Twitter. If you DM me on Twitter, I will give you that action. Just like that. That's all I'm going to do. Trying to get the social media interaction up. We want hundreds of thousands of people watching the show. I mean, it would be a lot more fun for me and Dan. The more people watching, the more people interacting. So we want you there. We want you driving the show. It's the fans that are going to drive this show. So if you interact on Twitter, you hit me up with a DM today. I'll be watching right up until these games kick. But I do have 2 total positions that I did bet this week as well. So again, like 5 total bets and 4 regular season win totals, and that's it. That's the slate for me, my friend.
Right on. All right. A little less heavy on the week one, but that's professionally. We're seeing where the line moves and see how, the games play out. I just want to, leave us with Clemson now a 10.5-point underdog. Money is still coming in on Clemson. Pouring in. I'm going to leave you guys with my best bet, which is a Georgia Virginia Tech money line parlay, which is -233, not the sexiest play, but I think it's going to come in, and I'm going to be placing that later in about 2 minutes. So thank you, everyone, for listening. This is the College Football Game Plan show on nukethehouse.com. We'll be back next week breaking down week 2 games, and DM me on Ray on Twitter at Ray Greyfox to get his 2 plays. And if you want to hit me up on Twitter, I'm at Moneyline Miller. So follow us there on Twitter and on YouTube, nukethehouse.com. Hit the like and subscribe button again. We really appreciate all the feedback we're getting. So we'll see you guys next week. Ray, great show, and we'll see you guys next week.
Enjoy week 1, folks. Have a good one.